When I originally started this project, there were a number of questions in the pool asking about my thoughts on specific character matchups. So, I wanted to set aside a video to get those requested characters answered, and hopefully help you all with your knowledge of the matchup against Faust. In this video, I'll be covering 4 characters: Dizzy, Ino, Slayer, and Remlethal. My thoughts on how easy or difficult the matchup is for Faust will be gauged on the following scale: highly advantaged, advantaged, even, disadvantaged, and highly disadvantaged. On the classic ratio of 10 matchup scale, this equates to, in Faust's favor, 6.5 or better, 6 to 5.5, 5, 4.5 to 4, and 3.5 or worse. Personally, I feel Rev 2.1 does well in condensing the matchups to where they're not heavily lopsided. It will be rare that any matchups go any further than 7-3, and there's only a handful of them that, I feel, reach 7-3 within the current meta. But speaking of the current meta, my word is not the end-all be-all of everything. These are based in my own experiences. While that heavily revolves around my matches, this will also pull from my experiences watching other players at every level and conversations with other players. I will be summarizing my conceptions and misconceptions that I may not know are misconceptions at this time into an opinion. And it's just that, an opinion. As players, we should always be willing to learn, grow, and thus be willing to accept changes to our personal truths. So if I'm missing something glaring, please come forth, help me learn or play so we can both grow. Let's put the C in FGC. Admittedly, this is a match I've very rarely played personally. Honestly, I think the last Dizzy I played was EVO 2017, and that's over half a year gone now. So please forgive me as I go into this. A lot of this is more anecdotal knowledge, but I want to provide my knowledge anyway for the person that did ask. Generally, the matchup between Faust and Dizzy is a sort of tug-of-war, where both of them are trying to enter the close range within each other at an advantage state. So I think it's best for me to break it down in what happens at each part of the match. At full screen, Dizzy gets a lot of opportunities to set up her game plan. Additionally, her setups make it more difficult for Faust to both get in and poke due to Fish protecting Dizzy from single hits, which Faust uses mainly for his pokes. From here, Faust wants to get the far slash range, where it becomes difficult for Dizzy to do anything. She's at a range where committing an air dash gives Faust a lot of time to react in anti-air, and trying for any sort of setup may get her poked out. This forces her to play her hand. She either needs to back out, go back to full screen and do more setups, or get in before Faust does the same to her. But from there, getting a little bit closer, she becomes stronger again with equalish pokes, and she's in her ice and fire pillar range, which can start her game, provide lockdown, safe block strings, and rewarding frame traps. This time, Faust has his hand force where he needs to either poke her to get her back out to that far slash range, or get in before she does the same to him. Here, we reach both characters' end goal, getting into close range combat at an advantage. This allows both characters to throw their best mix-ups at one another. Overall, I feel Dizzy's mix-up game is trickier, and when she's on defense against Faust, she can counter Faust better with her buttons. That said, Faust gets bigger rewards off of successful baits and scoring counter hits, especially with Dizzy's low stun. Overall, they both excel at so many specific spots of the screen that I feel like it's mostly even. At full screen, it's a game of patience for Ino, where she needs to figure out how to close the gap. Because her approaches are more linear, she needs to get into a position where she can approach at least somewhat safely, all while dealing with Faust pulling items. It's important for Ino to land some sort of lockdown move so that she can approach safely, such as Note or HCL YRC. Ino has only so many tools to close the distance, namely Air Dash and Stroke the Big Tree, the latter beating a number of Faust moves from a distance, such as Scalpel Pull and Far S. Of Ino's tools and game plans, Faust has some way to handle each and every one of them in turn. That is, until she gets in. Then it becomes very difficult for Faust. Ino's tools beat many of Faust's and requires good timing and knowledge on Faust's behalf to get out of pressure. Faust's defensive options are weaker generally, and basic defense only goes so far before having to commit to an action. That said, once Faust is in, Ino also has her fair share of difficulties getting out. Her VCL on Wake Up can trade or put her in a position where it's difficult for Faust to confirm. Her super also can turn the tides in her favor, as it's +1 on block or knocks down if it hits. Until recently, I felt the match was advantage for Faust, mostly because Aino had a harder time getting in and Faust could keep her out for a long period of time. The reasons I feel it may be even now is because of Aino's newer tools, such as the downward angled air dash, 5D YRC, and whatever the heck changes on her downward air dash, HCL YRC, that makes her anywhere up to +18 on block on Oki. And because of this, she actually only spends 25 meter instead of 50 meter, which gives her many more safe options and opportunities to pressure Faust on Wake Up, and ways to get in that are more difficult and tricky to deal with.
Come on over here. Come on, coward. Coward! I know that I want to punch you in the nose. I'll beat your goddamn ass, you son of a bitch.
Similar to Aino, Slayer wants to get in and run his game, but has trouble with being kept out of range with Faust moves, which do a great job in stopping Slayer in his tracks. Unlike Aino, his tools for getting in are more committal, less tricky, and lead to either standing resets or knockdown, where Slayer is forced to close the distance and providing him weaker Oki in turn for the corner push. Slayer's tools once he's in are generally commitments, albeit with high rewards, but require specific gaps to prevent Faust from jumping out or mashing out. Especially as Faust counter hits rewards him with exactly what he needs in the situation, between making space or getting a knockdown. Basic defense goes far against Slayer, which is what Faust normally has to work with. The changes to Slayer's bite makes just defense a bit scarier of an option and provides more reward to Slayer, but ultimately getting out of his pressure is still more accessible for Faust's basic defensive options, putting Faust back into his optimal ranges where he can keep Slayer out again, or run his own train on Slayer. On defense, Slayer has options, namely backdash cancels, but Faust has decent ways to stop these, such as a 5K that also prevents the up back after a backdash cancel. So, to a point, Slayer is forced to respect Faust, and gives Faust a lot of opportunity to run his own game onto Slayer. More akin to Dizzy, Ramlethal is also a setup character that needs her space to get her game going. Unfortunately for Ramlethal, her sword sets don't give her defense and offense at the same time, like Dizzy's fish. Because of this allows Faust to better close the distance on Ramlethal, to prevent her from activating swords, or to make her swords obsolete by moving away from them, forcing her to play a different game without them, which is generally very close range. Ramlethal can play with her swords equipped, instead of setting them on the field, which gives her solid pokes that are very comparable to Faust's, and extremely rewarding in some cases, but then she doesn't have the swords on the field and needs to work towards that. Essentially, she's forced to play a very careful game between the two options to reach her game plan against Faust. Either have the swords and have good pokes, or do not have the swords and have them on the field, but then have really lame pokes on the other hand. Ramlethal's normal method of setting swords safely is jumping up in the air and setting them out. Generally, this tactic is out of reach for many characters, but Faust can use Jump H or S door to both prevent the option and punish it greatly with counter hits. Faust can also use Jump H to clear set swords. Being airborne is one of Ramlethal's few safe zones when facing other characters, but Faust takes that away from her using Jump H. Strong use of Jump H should help remove that option off the table for her. Similar to the other characters that we covered in this video, once she gets in with her sword sets, she has a lot of opportunities, but still, basic defense does really well against her, leaving opportunities for Faust to get out of her chains with solid reactions and good fuzzy bash. Thank you for watching, and a special thanks to those of you out there who left comments on episode 1 and shared the video with friends and over Twitter. You're the real MVPs. If you're new here, welcome. I'll provide a link over to the right side for you to check out the first episode if you'd like. If you have any Faust questions, shoot them my way on Twitter, and use the hashtag FaustFAQ so it's easier for me to track. I'd appreciate it. The next episode will be on Faust optimization, answering questions on executing Faust gameplay. Until then, tell someone you appreciate them, because I appreciate you, and I'll see you here next time.